Hey folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris coming to you live from central Pennsylvania, somewhere here in what I consider the Midwest of the Mid-Atlantic region. I know that's a weird, contradicting statement. This is not the Midwest, but the values and the way people live around here and their ideas and the way they earn their living reminds me a lot of the Midwest, where I spent some of my formative years living on a dairy farm in Ohio and having spent a lot of time out there. This is between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, right in the middle of Pennsylvania. That would be the same part of the state. So welcome to the stream, folks. This is Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. I'm Chris, and today I have a special featured guest who is a South African expat living in France. I'll introduce him in just a moment. But before I get to that, let me just take care of a little important business. For those of you who are longtime followers and viewers on the channel, you are very familiar with the special relationship that the channel has with Giselle, our friend from Namibia who lives in South Africa. She's a musician, Giselle. Gezelle, for those who don't remember her. Her album recently debuted this year called Vir ons Mense, with beautiful songs like Zuidwest and Zuid-Afrika and Vir ons Mense, Plek in die Zonne. Beautiful songs, fantastic musician. So unfortunately, some disappointing news, not about Giselle herself personally, but about her and Johan's father. Both of their fathers are not doing very well. Johan's father, unfortunately, has tested positive for the COVID virus, the Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19, is currently in hospital and not doing very well. He's 76 years of age. Giselle's father apparently had two heart attacks or two strokes, one of the two, in Namibia, and was to go off to the lovely state-built, wonderful cardiac facility at this big hospital that was announced with great fanfare when it was open. Unfortunately, the hospital said they couldn't take him, not because he's white, not because he doesn't have money, not because they don't want him, but because they've allowed that brand new cardiac wing of that hospital to fall into disrepair. And unfortunately, her father doesn't have the means to get to another facility for private care. And so apparently he's had either two heart attacks and two strokes and is resting at home and not getting hospital care. It's a horrific situation if you're living in Southern Africa, not to have access to proper medical care. We constantly hear nonsense perpetrated against America claiming about our broken health system, but I guarantee you that no matter what your status in this country, you have a heart attack, you rock up in an emergency room, you will receive treatment and you will receive good, decent treatment. So please send your hearts and prayers out to both Johan's father and to Giselle's father. Anyway, folks, put them in your prayers. Let's hope for the best for both of them. And let's switch over to today's topic. So today my special featured guest is Hugo Kruger, who is an engineer, and he is currently living in France where he works. And we're going to talk about energy today. For those of you who don't know, I actually have some expertise and experience in the energy business. I know it's kind of funny for an Army officer, huh? No, absolutely. I've done a lot of research in the energy field, alternative energy, petroleum especially, written papers on it, given lectures on it, spoken at conferences, including the Energy in Africa conference, as well as alternative energy at the American Renewable Energy Day in Aspen, Colorado. So there you go, folks. Let's bring in my guest. My guest today is Hugo Kruger. Hugo, welcome to the channel.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me, and thank you, everyone, for watching.
So how's it going?
It's going good, yeah. It's in France. It's turning into winter. The coronavirus is alive and not killing anyone, strange enough. Yeah, no, it's actually back to normal. You know, I never thought I would say that in January. Everything is back to normal except for the annoying mask on the transport. French economy is 95% back to what it used to be. And I would like to tell all the prophets of doom that the world has gone back to normal. You know?
So you're here to tell us that France's economy has recovered to almost the level it was at previously.
Yeah,
Okay.
the restaurant. Look, some people got hurt. It's not saying that nothing bad happened. The restaurant owners got hurt. The people who worked in tourism got hurt. Some people got fired. But you know, if you fire, you can rehire as new opportunities. The French economy is back in as full steam as it was. You know, it's French; they don't work that hard. But Europe is recovered, and it actually managed to bounce back. You know, and despite everyone telling us we will never go back to normal, that life would never change. I was in Portugal 2 weeks ago. The airplanes are starting to fly. So it is good news. You know, there's good news to this whole crazy lockdown stuff. And I saw today WHO said that they never said we should go into lockdown, and they believe that lockdown is worse for the economy and that it creates poverty. So just have to carry on. The WHO mismanaged everything they touched, and we should stop listening to them.
No, I was just curious. It's good to hear that France's economy is almost returned to normal, which makes it 1/10 the size of California. So very impressive. Good to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to start with California. Let's say a topic tonight is energy, right?
Yep. Go
And
ahead.
watched, was talking with an energy investor last week on energy in Africa. You know, Africa's got potential for energy. And I'm worried. I'm a bit worried that we are going, in the Western world, we're going to push energy solutions onto Africa that are not feasible. Fortunately, the investors are thinking of that, but I don't think the governments are thinking of this. And there's a lot of risk, lots of opportunity as well in Africa, but a lot of risk to impoverish Africa. And we need to be a little bit vigilant as to what is happening. So I want to start with California because it's probably the best example as to what can happen when you follow idiotic ideas. And Gavin Newsom, I do not know where you dug him out of the soil. I don't know how that guy can stay in power for so long. And I want to add Bill de Blasio as well. There's something weird in your coastal areas. I don't know what they're eating. Maybe it's the vegan food, but something is not making sure that their cognitive ability has gone down. So let's look at what happened in California. California came and they're trying to be virtuous and green. You know, green is a religion like critical race theory, and it's probably a more dangerous religion. So they said in California that they're going to shut down nuclear and oil and gas. So at the moment, California is importing energy from the other states. They've gone renewable, and we'll talk later about why renewables might not be a bright idea, despite the shine, the sun being bright and wind and all these things. And at the moment, energy poverty for the first time is increasing in California, actually in the last 10 years. So what's happening with all the middle-class people in California? Well, they're going to where there's gas. They're going to Texas. They're going to probably Pennsylvania. I'm not sure. I saw your economy is not doing too badly, but they're definitely going to Texas. They're going to South Carolina. They're going to Florida. Lots of inner migration. The biggest form of migration in America is interstate migration between states.
No, but Hugo, but that's always been the case. I mean, Americans are mobile people, so but we should put this in perspective. So, because some people not from the U.S. would take that to mean that it's a new phenomenon. It's not. It's normal for Americans to move 7 or 8 times in a lifetime. That's quite a normal thing. Although millions of Americans never move, that's just normal on the mean. But what the difference here, what you're getting at, is that these are actually economic and energy refugees and political refugees from California fleeing the lunacy out there.
Yeah, so correct. Okay, you obviously know a bit more about the history of America than I do. But yeah, the migration, California is a dying state. Despite having the 4th largest economy in the world, they still have something like almost 1/3 of the people in energy poverty. Now, let me just say the definition of energy poverty. Energy poverty means that you spend more than 10% of your income on energy. Okay, so you spend usually 1/3 on housing, you spend 10% on energy. So you've got 60% left for food, and that's generally what it covers, food and transport and all this type of thing. As soon as the level goes above 10%, you are living from hand to mouth. Now, it means that many people in California today, because of Gavin Newsom and because of his religion, are suffering, and they are living in similar conditions to people in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, it's a scandal for the United States, the richest and strongest country in the world, to have energy poverty like this. Fortunate thing, to the strength of the American system, America is a federal country. We tend to forget that we look at the outside, meaning different states can have different rules. And the states that have got a business mindset, the energy mindset, they are winning the race. They're getting all the brains to come there. And the state that has won the last 10 years has been Texas. Texas has got, unfortunately, Dallas might vote Democrat now. That's scary. They're bringing the crap ideas with them. But at the same time, this is why Texas it's got a very young population, and why people would like to move to Texas. So I trace this all back to energy. So just to define what is energy, from your high school physics book, you would learn energy is the ability to do work, something of this sort, the ability to change a system from one state to another. There's a few definitions, but it's relatively the same thing. E equals mc squared is energy, E equals mgh is potential energy, E equals mv squared is kinetic energy. There's different forms of energy.
All right, let's stop off the highfalutin science here. I'm gonna lose my audience.
Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of equations to describe energy. Also, one which we tend to forget, and I would like to get into that, is agriculture. Agriculture is also energy. And then the last one also is buildings, state planning, buildings. These things are all tied to energy. It's not entirely energy, but there's an argument to be made that you need to be careful what you do. So energy is everywhere. Every project you made had to use some equipment, some machine that has a rating on it that says kWh, kilowatt hours, okay, or power or wattage or something of the sort. It means it used energy. Power is energy times the time. kilowatt hour we measure it in. And now, I want to get back to Africa here.
Well, before you get to that, you mentioned energy poverty, 10% of your budget, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the only things I spend energy directly on, I mean, obviously I buy goods, the energy, I don't know if that's part of the calculation. I don't think it is, but my direct energy cost, and I'm just looking at my pay or whatever, C for pay, and then what I get for take home. Considering that my only cost for energy at the moment are electricity for heating and cooling in the house and petrol for my automobile, I spend on average 1% of my income. Even if I bounce that up to where taxes are taken out, it's 1.6%. You can see taxes take a big bite out of my income, but so it raises that. But 1.6% of my income is spent on energy. And even if I adjust that for the most, let's overestimate it, it's less than 2% I spend. By comparison to people in California, as you said, 1/3 of whom live in energy poverty. That's crazy.
So 10% is the limit. Some of them spend up to 20% of their budget on income.
Right, but I'm saying the number of people that live in energy poverty is just astounding in California, and that doesn't even take consideration all the people who have no access to energy. The refuge for all the people who decided to make Los Angeles a third world squatter camp or San Francisco a third world squatter camp. They're not even part of that calculation.
I can't speak to whether they're part of it or not, but 1/3 scares the hell. If I was Gavin Newsom, I'd be scared. But, what I can't understand is why he keeps on winning elections. Because this is this weird thing about Californians. They utterly stupid disregard.
It has a lot to do with many different factors. They're a bit complicated. Education system, but also the way the politics draw. Now, for governor, it's hard to explain how an idiot keeps getting elected for governor. But members of Congress and the state legislature, it's quite easy to do with the way that they gerrymander. But this is all self-induced. California privatized its energy electricity market over 20 years ago. And they did so because the corrupt politicians worked out a corrupt deal with Enron. And then Enron overcharged consumers like me, because I was living in California, an outrageous amount for electricity, and people lost their minds. But it wasn't just that. California mandates, when I lived there, I don't know what the current situation is, but 7 different blends of unleaded gasoline. 7 different blends. What the hell is that all about? They're the only state in the world, only state in the country that does that. So I was paying at the time, 20 years ago, now this is nothing for Europeans, but they'll go, what are you talking about? That's no big deal. But I was paying $4.85 a gallon, and I was living in Iowa before I went to California. And in Iowa, I was paying $1.75 at the same time I paid $4.85 a gallon in California, all because of the state imposing these burdens on the public to make the air cleaner. Well, the air is not cleaner. It had nothing to do with that. It has a very different reason why the air is like that. Stop putting 16 million people living in a place with enough water for 6 people, and mountains block the airflow, you dingbats. Anyway.
Okay, so I mean, we can have a show on California. We can probably talk one day, and we won't
go ahead.
through the problems, right? So I want to get to energy. Another country that is messing up the energy is the most industrious country on the European continent, which is Germany. Germany went for the Energiewende, energy transition. They were promising people heaven on earth with solar and wind. And surprise, surprise, a few months ago, Germany opened a new, guess what, coal power station. Mm-hmm. Okay, why did Germany do it? Well, the Germans, post-Fukushima, there was a very strong anti-nuclear, pro-green religion, and I call the religion lobby in Germany, that said that, we need to get rid of nuclear because apparently nuclear is bad. Complete nonsense, okay? Do you know how many people died from Fukushima, Chris?
Nobody died from Fukushima.
Nobody died from Fukushima, absolutely zero. How many people died from Chernobyl? Well, we don't know. More or less 6,000.
Probably.
More or less 6,000. Okay, so Chernobyl was a communist state. They screwed up. 6,000. How many people died from 3 Mile Island? Nobody.
Yeah. But the Germans learned the completely wrong lesson about Fukushima. The lesson from Fukushima is not that nuclear energy is dangerous. It's to not build your freaking not to put your nuclear power plant on the freaking ring of fire next to an earthquake-prone zone where tsunamis can come in and then have people fail to follow the proper procedures. None of the German plants sit on any fault lines. None of them were in any danger, and they abandoned the nuclear program, which provided 1/3 of their energy at the time. And they're still burning brown coal, lignite.
Yeah. So they had to clear forests to build new coal power stations. Okay, so much for the ecology. Since Germany's Energiewende, they spent, and I checked this rough figure from Google, $680 billion. Okay, now keep that number in mind. 680 billion, I think it's euros. Anyways, euros or dollars about the same, on transitioning energy. Since then, the CO2 emissions has more or less got a bit down, flatlined. Okay, one nuclear power station, and I want to get to nuclear, Hinkley Point, the most over budget, most expensive in the world, also corruption, this costs 8 billion euros. So Germany, with all the money they spend on solar and on wind, not including the corruption, could have built 85 nuclear power stations. That means they could have added double the industrial capacity of France to the European continent, solved the carbon emissions, and not put more of the people in energy poverty. Energy poverty is also increasing in Germany. Now, here's the thing: as to people say, well, you know what, the cost of renewables have gone down. Okay, that is, look at Google it, they'll tell you it has gone down, it is remarkably low. Yes, the cost of panels have gone down, the cost of generation has gone down, but that's half the story.
What's about reliability?
So here's an amazing fact, Chris, which you probably don't know. Okay, I know you're an army guy, you're a well-educated guy, you know a lot about history and geography and the weather probably. Do you know that the sun doesn't always shine? And do you know that the wind doesn't always blow?
No.
Are you aware of that?
Germany is covered in 365 days of bright sunshine every year. And the fact that the Earth is tilted so that the Northern Hemisphere doesn't get direct sunlight has no impact on generating solar photovoltaic in Germany, right?
Right. Okay. So can you please explain this to Gavin Newsom if ever you speak to him, or slap him for me? So here's the problem. What do you do? Okay, here's the other thing about wind energy. Why I think it is utterly ridiculous. The equation is P equals V squared. So it's a cube of a squared equation, right? So if the wind blows twice as fast, we've got 4 times as much energy. Mm-hmm. Now, that sounds amazing if you're a politician. It also means if the wind blows half as fast, you've got 1/4 of an energy. Okay. So when the wind blows up, with all the media, all the press telling us wind energy, the North Sea is blowing, it is providing amazing energy, right? Nobody tells you when the wind isn't blowing. What do we do? So what do we do when there's a shortage?
You turn the coal-fired power plants on and you burn coal.
You turn coal or you turn natural gas. So here's the interesting thing. All the guys selling natural gas in the world are investing heavily into renewable energy. Now, isn't that strange to you, Chris, that renewable energy is being pushed by the natural gas lobby?
Not at all, because they build the backup natural gas plants so that they can fire them up and make a fortune when the solar and the photovoltaic are producing insufficient energy to keep the grid up. So they make a fortune by overcharging the cost of natural gas. Boom.
Yeah. So they would tell you we install a 20 megawatt or 100 megawatt wind farm, say 20, okay, for argument's sake. Mm-hmm. In real time, when the wind is actually blowing, not the super wind speed we get once or twice a year, you get about 5 megawatt. So what do they add to it? A 15 megawatt gas station. 15 plus 5, you get back to 20. Mm-hmm. So it is not a backup, it is the generation. Okay, this is the lesson. So here's something. Natural gas is very good. I like Texas. I like natural gas. I like the fact that Russia is pumping natural gas into Europe. Maybe the Europeans need to get LNG from the Americans, and the cost is coming down. But why don't we just skip the renewables and we be honest and we go directly for natural gas? Okay, that's the first question. So my worry is this. South Africa is going to invest a lot of money into private-public, private-public...
partnerships.
Partnerships, PPPs, yeah, that's right. And Eskom is looking into a lot of renewables, wind and energy and all these type of things. Mm-hmm. Looks wonderful. I bet you, I want you to take a bet, that they're going to come with a sales pitch. They're going to say it is for solar generation, and it is to supply the lights during the day, and at night we're going to have a gas power station or a diesel generator, or we're going to have coal, or they're going to say we're going to store it. Now, here's the problem with storage. If storage were to work, you would have wind power powering the storage, and the storage would supply you at night. Batteries have got the energy density problem. You need lots of land for a battery to supply the whole Earth. It's not going to work. There is one storage that does work, and that's hydropower. It's the one nobody likes, because it's MGH, potential energy. You pump water up and you gravitate it down. Now, there are some small mini grids in Africa that have looked into this, and kudos to them if that works. I am not being very neutral on that. If the price is right, maybe people should go for that solution. I'm skeptical of the battery solution, because if you install batteries to your grid to supply your house, the price goes up by something like 10-fold of your energy generation. So bad energy solutions is going to create energy poverty. And who's going to be very susceptible to it? Africans are going to be very susceptible to it. And this is what we need to warn against. Cheapest energy in Europe is 2 countries. Okay, well, the cheapest is Iceland, but they've got geothermal, they've got volcanoes everywhere, so they don't count. Then you've got France and Sweden. Why does France and Sweden have some of the cheapest generation in the world?
Nuclear power generates 3/4 of France's electricity and 50% of Sweden's.
Yeah, per capita, Sweden's got the highest in the world. in absolute values, I think the United States generates 20% of its energy from nuclear power. And a lot of that nuclear energy comes from recycled nuclear bombs. Okay, I think something like 10% for a decade was from recycled nuclear bombs. Well done to President.
Don't tell people about our bombs.
No, but it's Russian bombs which you bought. Well done to President George W. Bush, the first one, not the second one. I think he was an idiot. Okay, he negotiated with the Russians to decommission the bombs and the nuclear energy in the United States for, I think, about a decade. 10% of it came from recycled nuclear bombs. Okay, very good thing overall, because the Russians just had too many bombs in the world. So yeah, this is sort of the thing. Nuclear energy is something we need to look at. Okay, but there's a danger to nuclear energy as well. It is not that it's going to blow up. It is actually very safe. My job is to create nuclear power stations, and I actually design it against seismic overflip and things of this sort. So if we have a core meltdown, if we have an earthquake, even if you have a tsunami nowadays, nuclear power stations can resist it. Okay, even if you build it in Japan.
Also, people don't realize that all the nuclear power plants in the United States are 50 years old for the most part, and some are even older than that because of the environmentalists and the eco-Nazis preventing us from building nuclear power plants. And so nuclear technology today is not what exists. We're talking about microreactors that can deliver all sorts of energy solutions, and they're modular reactors, things like that. You can save them, and even if they were to have the worst of circumstances, the impact would be quite minimal compared to what we saw at Chernobyl even, or at 3 Mile Island. It really irritates me how the nuclear energy industry has been handicapped and held back, and we're not building these plants. Instead, people want to build these big, massive things that cost $8 or $10 billion when it's not necessary in nuclear power. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
No, that's accurate. So here's the thing. Nuclear energy has got one big cost to it. Okay, there's actually two costs. And surprisingly, the Chinese doesn't have the second cost, and I'll explain to you why. So the first cost is initial investment.
I know why the Chinese don't have it, because you're going to get the waste, and they just put it wherever they want. But go ahead.
But that's, okay. So you've got initial investment.
Yeah.
And then very low operation costs. Now, anyone who's done a bit of cash flow analysis will know you've got initial investment and you have to pay it back through the money you generate, and it reaches an equilibrium. Generally, for a nuclear power station, depends where you build it, 40 to 50 years, you can pay your money back. Some of them 30, some of them 20. I think in the States, you did it very well. Depends how much people are prepared to pay for it, but you can pay it back. Then there's a big decommissioning cost at the end. Now, decommissioning should not be more than 10% of the initial investment. And this is the argument being used against nuclear energy by the Germans. And they're saying France, for example, will have a big cost coming to knock their children. Well, no, not if you do it as France and as America does it at the moment, yes, because there's an idiotic policy in the United States and in France, which says anything that comes from a nuclear power station is considered to be nuclear waste. The Chinese, they do it differently. And they are very clever on this. They say, no, anything that measures radioactivity from a nuclear power station is nuclear waste.
Okay, I'll buy that.
I buy the Chinese, in this case, are correct. They're wrong on the Wuhan virus. But
for once, I'm in agreement with the Chinese.
Yeah, so that is why the Chinese can manage to have decommissioning costs much lower. So how do you dismantle a nuclear power station? Well, you take a diamond blade and you cut up the concrete and the steel and you put it in a hole. It is not that complicated. Okay, there's lots of theories as to it. Yes, you need to take the waste to a high treatment facility. The French treat their waste a little bit differently than the Americans. America, you put it in the nuclear station and you put it deep underground. There's a mountain facility somewhere where you put it as well. The French, they sometimes use the waste and they recycle it, and then they make a mixed oxide and they relaunch a new nuclear power station. And there's a debate as to which one is cheapest and most efficient. You have to do the economics to work it out. And generally, I follow the American advice because you guys always follow the dollar. But yeah, the Chinese have decommissioning figured out. They say anything that comes from a nuclear power station that is radioactive, that is radioactive. But if Chris's shoe is in the radio power station and it doesn't taste, I throw it in a dustbin.
Yeah, it's not nuclear waste. Well, let me get
according to US, it is.
Yeah, well, we've got our head up our rectum too, and that's why our nuclear industry is so far behind. We should be, instead of this war on coal, there should have been a war on environmentalists, so that we can build nuclear power plants all over this country. Certainly modular ones. But Barbara Sattler is in the chat, and she says, "I live in Austria, Österreich. What does that say about nuclear power?" I'm not sure, other than that if there's ever an accident, you're downwind. So just keep that in mind.
So I know Austria's got a very strong anti-nuclear lobby, as in most of the German-speaking world.
Yeah.
There is pushback coming, though. A lot of Germans have realized that Angela Merkel, so here's my impression of what Germany did. Remember that Lufthansa airplane that crashed into the mountain?
Yes.
High-tech technology, and then the pilot commits suicide.
Exactly.
This is the metaphor that describes Germany's energy vendor.
Yeah.
They did it absolutely moronic. There's no other word for it. I don't know what they try to achieve, trying to be virtuous, but this thing is creating energy poverty. And here's the other thing. If you don't have energy, anyone in South Africa should know this, you don't have economic growth, you don't have prosperity, you have civil unrest. Year before last year, Emmanuel Macron, in all his wisdom in France, decided to increase the diesel tax, okay, by a few cents. What did you have? You had social unrest and the Gilets Jaunes riots, which still hasn't ended. If you mess with energy pricing, people are very sensitive to it because we feel it directly. As soon as you go over that 10% limit, you realize no more holiday, you realize no more nice lunch in restaurants, all these things are going away. And you'll have social unrests. So you need to try and get your energy price as low as possible to be competitive in the world. And the problem is Africa's got some of the most expensive energy in the world. The French have done it a bit more clever. They've got nuclear power, but now they're talking about trying to reduce nuclear power to replace it with renewables. So here's the joke about it. If you replace France's nuclear powers, so they say they want, let's say, 20% less operation. It doesn't mean it's going to cost you 20% less money. It's going to cost you the exact same because you're only running your reactors at lower capacity. So why do that? Why not run them at full capacity? You've got lower cost of energy, and nuclear is clean. Nuclear kills the least amount of all the energy sources that there is. The one that kills the most, by the way, is hydropower, because when people build dams, the concrete falls on them and they die. But nuclear energy kills the least amount of people. It is safe. It is proven to work. And even if there's a reactor meltdown anywhere in France or in the United States, like there was in Fukushima or Chernobyl, it can be handled. It will not be a disaster. It will be a disaster in the sense it has to be managed, but it is manageable. It's a manageable risk.
There's a number of comments. Let me get to them very quickly, Hugo, here from the chat. I'll bring some of them in. I want to mention. So first off, Tian, who's an aviation industry guy, said that it was German wings, not Lufthansa. You're correct. But in the interest of full disclosure, at the time that pilot committed suicide and killed all these people in this German wings flight, it was 50% owned by Lufthansa. So yeah, so it was actually German wings, to be correct. Lynn says, where does Hugo live? In France. And where does he come from? South Africa. Duncan McKenzie says, I work as a freelance software engineer in South Africa. Load shedding is a nightmare. Oh, I know. And I've devoted countless hours of broadcast to Eskom and its useless situation and the fact that market is controlled by the state. Then Grimm says, the future is nuclear. Solar panels are extremely difficult to discard and cannot be recycled. Panels will cause extreme long-term damage. And beyond that, another comment I was going to get to here, I made some notes as Hugo was sharing with us, is that there's all kinds of problems. But they use rare earth elements to make some of these things, like some of the things for wind turbines and for the blades.
And they mined in the Congo, huh?
Well, not just, in conflict zones, but also they tear mountains apart. The ecological damage from rare earth mining is catastrophic, and the environmentalists seem to be blind to that. They just have this blind faith in putting these things up. And the other thing is, you talk about batteries. We'll get back to this in a second. Batteries too. Batteries are toxic. They're dangerous. And can you imagine a planet in which there are 800-pound batteries sitting around every kilometer? What that will do to the environment? It's just insane to think about this.
So for batteries, I'm not throwing the baby out of the bathwater. Electric cars, Elon Musk, all these things. I'm not convinced it can work. Electric cars at the moment is coal-powered cars, at least in the United States. Yep. In France, it's
nuclear-powered ones.
It's nuclear-powered ones, but to make those batteries, you need a lot of fossil fuels. Okay, and if you do a life cycle analysis over it, yes, it is true that you use a few less carbon emissions on an electric car, but it's very expensive at the moment. So unless that battery price can come down and it become energy dense, So here's the thing: when people judge energy, what I would like them to look at the amount of energy per kilogram of mass, energy density, and there's just nothing that compares to nuclear energy at the moment. Hydrocarbons is good, but okay, we care about CO2. Okay, we care about fossil fuels and the environment and all these things, and there's some legitimacy to it. It's not that they're onto nothing. I just think they exaggerate the risk. But there's a problem with South Africa of why we cannot have nuclear power or even coal power at the moment. It's because if you look at what happened in Kusile and Mandupi, prices was overblown because of corruption. Other thing which people don't take into account is South Africa has got a credit rating downgrade at the moment. So if we decide to build any power station, let's say nuclear, we are not going to have the low interest rates necessary for a long-term investment. So if your interest rate from nuclear power goes to 10%, it means that your energy is going to be 100 kilowatt hour. Then I'm against it. So unless you can get a very good, favorable loan term, and you're not screwed in the negotiations, I'm saying forget about nuclear as well. Okay. So what is your options for South Africa? At the moment, there's lots of mini grids in the country that is saying renewables. There's something to it. We've got some sunshine. If you've got no energy, go for renewable energy. Other thing we need to do is we need to have private-public partnerships coming online, and we need to have experiments with different types of energy. And I suspect natural gas is probably going to sell best in South Africa at the moment.
Well, because Hugo, I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but I think there's a flaw and you've kind of gotten to it now. I think there's a flaw in all this. The bottom line is that it won't really matter what South Africa's credit rating is like if they stop monopolizing the energy market and allow private competition, allow private vendors to come in. I could come in there with a consortium and build power plants, all kinds of power plants, whether you want to run off of coal that comes out of South Africa or buy it from Botswana, whatever you want to do. We can use coal bed methane that's coming up from Botswana. That's clean. That stuff we can use, or whatever. We can build power plants all over South Africa as long as we're given access to the marketplace and have free competition. Eskom will collapse in a matter of months because of their ineptitude, and will be able to deliver energy to South Africans. That won't rely on South Africa's credit rating. It'll rely on the credit rating of whoever the consortium is involved in it.
But here's the one problem with that, though. It's the long-term loans which you need to finance these projects would give you to make it appeasable to the people. You need about a 2 to 3% interest rate on it. It's a very low interest rate return. Mostly that's pension funds that puts it down. Okay, mostly that is government loans, long-term loans. So you need to get those loans. I'm not against privatization of the energy markets, but generally what you saw when the Eastern European countries privatized the energy markets, it ended up being the mafia controlling it, and it was actually it's sort of like a power share thing. Unless the rules are very well defined, the devil's in the details of those things. I'm skeptical of too much privatization. I mean, France has a central nuclear power, EDF. They do it quite well, but there's also issues. Centralization has problems. The United States has got a very good independent power supply, so has Sweden, so has Norway. If you have a model such as that, you can do it. But what's going to happen in South Africa? It's going to go to Simon Ramaphosa and his buddies, and they're going to call it private, but it's not actually private.
No, it's not. Well, that's obviously my comment is not made in the political realities of South Africa right now. It's made from a common sense perspective. Let me give you an example here. South Africa has 58 million people plus 5 million illegal immigrants, so we'll say 60 million people, and we'll just split the difference. 60 million people. Eskom provides electricity when it does for that population, and its revenue in 2019 was $12.4 billion US, right? Okay. Yeah. First Energy, which is my energy provider right here, and I'm not overly thrilled with them, but I'm just saying they provide energy to about 65,000 square miles, 6 million customers, 1/10 as many customers, and their revenue was $14.5 billion in 2016. It's the most recent, and they're actually profitable in 2018. So they provide energy for 1/10 of the size of South Africa's market as a private energy provider, a privately held corporation, and they have a profit, and they're larger in revenue than the entire Eskom. It says an awful lot about private energy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's privately managed because if they don't supply, you can change as a company, I hope. Problem though with energy, it's a lot like the roads and the trains, where it's a sense there is a natural monopoly, at least with the grid.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
That's
fair. The grid, but what you do is you create legislation, much like the telephone system and cable systems, in which the people who put the grid in are able to profit from it, but they're required to provide access to other providers for a reasonable fee, so that consumers can get the services.
No, that's definitely so. Yeah, that was the first point I made about it. Now, to get back to nuclear energy, there's some good innovations coming in the field, mostly in the United States and the UK. Rolls-Royce, by the way, makes energy, if people haven't noticed that. And they're talking about small modular reactors, and I'm quite excited about this.
That's what I mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah, small modular reactors. So 300 megawatt power stations can be put into an African town in the middle of nowhere, and it can technically power it. It's a few years away, I still think, from having a prototype, from getting all the engineering features out of it, but it is coming. And I'm hoping that this will be the ultimate goal of the carbon transition. At the moment, the transition fuel, which everyone calls it in Europe, to get off coal is going to be natural gas. It's not going to be renewables. Renewables, we should stop using that word because nothing is renewable. It annoys me.
That's nonsense. Well, this is like the green. There's no such thing as green. You look at green, you make green cars. No, they're getting energy from coal-fired power plants to charge the batteries. The batteries are toxic. It's causing environmental damage by making them, rare earth element mines and all the chemicals and stuff. There's no such thing as a free lunch. And I'm tired of hearing green. Something may be greener, but nothing is green. It's utter nonsense. Chris Redlings always says, do you really want a nuclear power plants run by a bunch of BEE employees?
We have.
Well, we
Kruger.
have Kruger. Yes, you already have it, but that's not BE. That's ESCOM. But what's the difference?
So here's the thing. Why I say it's not a bad thing. Okay, I'm against BE deals. I think it's a bunch of incompetence. Kruger was built by the French in the 1980s. It's not a pebble bed reactor popular to conception. It's a pressure water reactor. It's the same as the French design. Yeah. With nuclear energy, you've got international treaties governing you. It's very difficult, to manage it. You're going to have lots of diplomatic pressure if it goes the route of Medupi and Kusile and these type of power stations, which is why Kruger to date actually operates quite well. So given the international environment and restraints, I would say go for it. The problem that I mentioned earlier is the credit rating and the deal and the details. If it's a Gupta-related nuclear power station, forget about it. From the get-go, it's going to be a failure.
The Guptas.
Yes, the Guptas.
Nobody came from nowhere. Who do they know? Who do they blow?
What interesting thing about them is they remember they bought a uranium mine and they had the idea that you're going to build a nuclear power station and then you're going to use the same mine for the fuel. It doesn't work that way. No. You need to enrich it. You need to process it. You need to send it to Europe. So I suspect they made bad deals and they didn't even know what they were doing. They were just so busy stealing it. You steal everything.
So people are commenting about the nuclear power plants over South Africa. We're not talking about putting these nuclear power plants over South Africa. We're talking about the concept of it in general, and anywhere, not specifically in South Africa. So everybody, calm down. Before any of this could possibly take place, anything we're talking about, you need a change in governance. There's no way that ESCOM or that the ANC, the angry naughty children, are going to let their fingers off the pulse of Transnet, the dying SA or the dead SAA. ESCOM or all these other parastatals, they're not going to let them go. If they ever do anything, it'll be the fraudulent, privatization like Airports Company South Africa, which is an independent company. It's not governed by the government, which led to a diplomatic row between South Africa and the United States, by the way, one which I got embroiled in because they wanted to charge us landing fees for our official aircraft from the military. And the U.S. government said, no, we're not paying to land. We're diplomats. We're exempt from that. And they said, no, it's a private company. And we're like, bull crap.
Yeah. So this is what I'm worried about, is that privatization is not really privatization. It's actually just theft.
Yeah.
And this unfortunately will happen throughout the African continent. I mean, I think Angola a few years ago, something like 25% of their budget disappeared. Just, you just forget to capture the dollars.
Well, you might want to look in Isabella dos Santos' bank accounts. I'm just saying.
Chris, that's very racist for even suggesting that the daughter of the leader of Angola would be involved in criminal activity, especially since she's the richest person in Africa, richest woman in Africa, I think.
Oh, you say that's racist to me? I'm sorry. I was busy playing chess. That is a racist game because I went first because I'm a white player. It's just comical what these people come up with. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is one of the things I want to add is that, South Africa's got an energy crisis. We cannot grow our economy without fixing ESCOM. On top of that, we have a water crisis, to make insult to injury. Water crisis scares the hell out of me because I studied with Syrian refugees in France, and the Syrian civil war, it wasn't entirely water, but it was the water crisis they added as a catalyst for the civil war in Syria. So when you run out of water, when you run out of energy, you have desperate people, and people act as they've always acted. So it's one of the things that we need to start talking about, and I'm not even sure how to solve it. Obviously, you need to get the ANC out of power. You need private producers of electricity. There's a big debate to be have. How can South Africa get its energy supply, which was the cheapest in 1994, by the way, in the world?
It was also 42% of all of Africa's entire electricity generation was in one country of 34 million people, South Africa.
Yeah, we sold our surplus to other African countries. It had very good bank statements, and it lasted until about the year 2000, and then things went south. 2007, of course, with Talon Bezuidenhout refusing to build new power stations. It wasn't Jacob Zuma. Blackouts started under Mbeki before the 2008 blackouts. They didn't plan for the expanding population. They didn't plan that if you're going to give a lot of people in the country free houses and electricity, that maybe you need to supply the electricity from somewhere. Mbeki is on record to admit that was his only mistake. He made a lot of other mistakes.
his only mistake. Well, they also didn't anticipate the boom in the platinum mining industry in Northwest, which was a major draw on electricity. The mining industry is the biggest consumer of electricity in South Africa.
So that's the thing. So there's the thing about African energy is we've got still big mining industries in South Africa. There's mines in Zimbabwe that use more energy than some African countries. Okay, and in South Africa, probably the South Deep mine, Johannesburg. So we need lots of energy to power the industrial economy. You cannot, there's no way around it. And for that, you need large energy supply. You need big power stations. And at the moment, we're struggling to get Kusile and Medupi functioning. You know, it's a very sad state of affair. I'm not even sure how Mr. De Ruyter is managing Eskom at the moment. Apparently, it's going a bit better under him. But South Africa is not exiting this energy crisis unless we build more supply. We get it from somewhere. And I'm not convinced that the renewables and the wind is going to provide us with the amount of energy needed to run an industrial economy. So we're going to have to look at coal, gas, nuclear. And I suspect the answer at the end of the day is going to be gas, just because it is so much easier to install, and it's going to come from the outside, not inside South Africa.
Well, I was going to say, provided that you have the natural gas. I'm not familiar that South Africa has much in the way of natural gas. A little bit offshore, but no they don't.
So there's a pipeline Mozambique that is being laid, but at the moment the Islamic State is over there.
Well,
we'll probably have to implicate our army there to get our gas.
No. LNG offshore. It'll be LNG offshore. It'll work that way. But it's yikes. The Grim. Oh, you got that. Kilometers per hour says, why are my comments being deleted? They're not being deleted. I've got right here. Possibly in the future, almost everything from cell phones to boom boxes, homes will use a new form of less destructive solar and/or kinetic panels. Okay, and what is that? What is that less destructive form? Solar thermal, which is now the term that's gone out of vogue, but I still use it. Solar thermal, which you concentrate, now they call concentrated solar power, and which you reflect with mirrors the sun's energy into a central point, and you heat up molten salts, which are stored underground, and you can restore it. Is far better, in my view, than solar photovoltaic, because your chances of actually getting energy, plus you can store it overnight, so you have less of a chance that you're not going to be able to deliver energy 24/7. But the problem is that, again, if you get 7 cloudy days, then you don't have any electricity.
So this is the problem. I mean, it works when the sun is shining and you've got the hottest day on the earth. And then everyone smiles, all the press releases and say energy has never been cheaper, renewables going to take over the world. But nobody reports what's happening late at night or in the middle of winter.
No, but see, I have the solution for you. Here's the solution. What we do is put in orbit, geosynchronous orbit, a network of solar panel collectors in space to get the direct ultraviolet radiation.
With a cable hanging in the air?
No. We use lasers to transmit it. We use the Tesla approach, and we can transmit the energy through the air down to power stations to collect it. Now,
okay, and what is that going to do to the atmosphere? I'm a bit skeptical of this.
Look, my Buck Rogers approach is no less crazy than all these lunatics telling us we need to buy solar panels.
So let's say solar panels, again, I'm not throwing the baby out of the bathwater. It can work to heat up your water and your geyser, probably in the African sun. And that's probably good for that.
And I've used it in Africa to keep my water geyser hot.
Yeah, so and that saves a part of your electricity bill. It takes a few years to pay back. It can work to keep some lights on, but everyone in South Africa knows if you go for solar panel, you always have a diesel generator as a backup. And now I'm just saying this is if we go for solar to power the country, it's completely idiotic, because that's going to happen on a grander scale. You're going to eventually have to buy a backup, which is either coal or gas. Peak hours is sometimes not when the sun is always shining. We tend to forget that. I tend to as I say, I don't see how you're going to power an industrial economy, our mines and our smelters and all these massive heavy industry, sectors. Cement companies, for example, that kiln needs to turn all the time. If it stops for a minute, you destroy the whole process. How are you going to run this on renewable energies without destroying lots of land, building massive wind farms which never power? It's a very complicated thing for something that can be managed much simpler.
No, it's a good point. But let's talk about African energy in general, because you're talking about what a lot of people don't realize, especially people in South Africa, is that of Africa's 1.3 billion people today, 640 million people have zero access to electricity of any sort.
Let me put it in a different perspective for you.
Yeah.
What percentage? Okay, what do you think is the highest percentage of energy usage in Africa? What type of material do they use?
Charcoal.
It's not skull. It's wood.
That's what you said. Charcoal. Charcoal's what I said.
Charcoal. Yeah.
That is wood.
45% of people in Africa still use chopped down forest.
You're stealing my thunder. That was the next line.
Yeah, they still chop down forests for wood. So environmentalists should support coal.
Charcoal. There, see, right there. There's my
charcoal to me is for braaivleis when you smash it all
but that's
together.
because you're rich, white, privileged South African. That's why you think that's what charcoal's for. But for most Africans, charcoal is how they heat. That's how they cook their food. That's how they heat water to bathe with and do their laundry and such. And of course, the charcoal comes from deforestation and huge ecological costs. We see also that it fuels terrorism in Somalia with Al-Shabaab cornering the charcoal market and making a fortune off of it to fund their operations.
So yes, the argument to the greenies. I understand the argument against coal, that it causes tuberculosis, air pollution, all these things. But
coal doesn't cause
tuberculosis. If you replace chopping down,
it causes respiratory disease.
Respiratory disease.
That's what you meant to say, yeah. Just to clarify.
Tuberculosis is the bacteria, whatever it's called, Anyway, lack of antibiotics. So if you chop down forests, okay, and you replace that with coal, isn't that better for the environment?
Of course.
Okay? Yes, coal is going to have other effects, but everything in life is a trade-off decision. So Europe, China, India, America all developed its industrial capacity via coal. Okay, it's an amazing fact. I think it is self-righteous from the Europeans and the Americans and the Chinese to impose carbon tariffs onto Africa and tell them they cannot have coal because it's bad for the environment.
Stop. Americans are not imposing carbon tariffs on anybody.
Okay, Americans, because you withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement.
Well, the Paris Climate Agreement doesn't have any controls. No one is forced to do anything. It's a BS gentleman's agreement that has no teeth of enforcement. So I get your point, but it is very, very audacious and very cocky and very arrogant of the Europeans to demand that people cut their emissions. But Americans are not involved in that. We don't have anything to do with it.
So the Europeans, the Germans, are giving money for Africa to develop renewable energies. And my only worry with these, call it renewable, first thing, there's no such thing as renewable. The first law of economics is scarcity. You're never going to have enough of anything. Okay, but Germans are sending money for renewable, for wind and solar energy to South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried that those tariffs and the price of that energy per kilowatt hour is going to put people in energy poverty. You're going to be probably just as bad as you were before, or even worse off. And my solution is to South Africa and to most of Africa is we don't have any other option but to use the resources we've got. So if you dig 13 kilometers deep in Mpumalanga or even in Pretoria and you go all the way north to Zambia, you find, 30 meters deep, not kilometers, sorry, you find coal under the ground.
Yep.
Not taking out the coal is not an option. That's the first point. Other thing is, South Africa, we pulverize our coal. So we have fly ash. That fly ash we add to cement. Our cement is actually green. South Africa is telling the world we have green cement.
Yeah.
They don't tell you where that comes from.
That comes from
green
coal.
Cement comes from coal power stations. Okay, so the cement is green, but to make the cement, we keep quiet. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai was built with green cement coming from the Tabo power station in Johannesburg. It's not green. Okay, so just to add that. So yes, I understand the climate change guys and I understand the debate, but again, you cannot tell people in Africa not to use the resources under the ground unless you have an alternative. And my suggestion is, well, you can invest into nuclear energy for Africa if you want to put your money down where your mouth is. Mm-hmm. But in the absence of not doing that, Africa's going to go for coal or natural gas. End of story.
Well, you talked earlier about energy poverty, but let me just put something in perspective. You mentioned Germany. They've removed all the nuclear power plants and put all these solar things in, these massive windmills. I've been there. They're eyesores and they're unreliable. They're incredible. What they did is they destroyed the tourism industry in Bavaria because we all used to drive to Bavaria to look at these beautiful, historic villages, medieval villages, that sort of thing, lovely houses, half-timbered houses. And now all of them have these hideous-looking solar panels on top of them, and they look ridiculous. And they're not
deep in the forest is a coal power station.
Exactly, just down the mile. So Germany has the highest electricity costs of any country in the world. And what they've done is the reason their emissions are flat is not because they've gotten rid of, they put these alternative energy in, because it's a wash. If anything, they've not gained anything because nuclear wasn't producing the emissions. So that's a wash. The reason their emissions are flat is because their industry is abandoning Germany and moving elsewhere where it can afford to buy electricity at rates that are not astronomical. Energy costs for some industrial firms in Germany is over 30 to 40% of the cost of manufacturing, and they can't bear that cost. Now, let me put something in perspective real quick here before you jump back in there, Hugo. So the Kyoto Protocol was agreed to in 1997, went into effect in 2000. The United States did not sign the Kyoto Protocol. That was the deal in which all these industrialized countries promised to bring their emissions down by 2.5% a year, right? Okay, that are 2%, 2.5%. The only country, major industrialized country in the world that actually lowered emissions, and now we're going to have to pick an artificial date because 2008, the global economy goes into a tailspin for 3 years. So you have to take those 3 years out. But from 2000 to 2008, the only industrialized country in the world that had reduced emissions was the United States. Year over year reduced. We didn't sign the accord. So what this means is those accords are bullshit. They mean nothing. They're simply agreements, a piece of paper to give people virtue signaling. The United States lowered its carbon emissions even though we let another 8 million people enter our country and our population soared. We lowered
you know why?
Innovation and replacing old, outdated equipment. That's why.
So the reason the United States did that, okay, is thanks to Texas. It's because the United States went largely from coal to natural gas. They skipped it to natural gas. Natural gas produces less carbon dioxide per gram, okay, per kilowatt hour than coal. So this is why they call it now the transition fuel. If you want to get rid of carbon dioxide, or if you want to reduce it, you go over from coal to natural gas. That is one sustainable solution, if you will. Nuclear, of course, you're correct that most of Europe did not reduce it, but there's a bit of a caveat to that.
Okay.
France and the UK have actually peaked with carbon emissions in the 1990s, and the reason is because of nuclear power.
Right.
France does not need to reduce its carbon emissions by a lot. It's only got it from its cars, and if it actually goes over to electric cars, okay, even though they have problems, they would reduce, their carbon emissions. So the point is, nuclear is the road to carbon emissions, and it probably leads through natural gas. Natural gas at the moment, it's not possible for nuclear energy even to compete with it. So I would say use natural gas where you've got coal, and if you think about industrializing your country on a higher level, go for nuclear innovation. And there's a lot of innovation coming out of the United States in nuclear energy. And I suspect in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to be talking nuclear everywhere. And I hope these greenies fall flat on their face. So this is just a story. I think we need to be very skeptical against, renewable energy, wind energy and solar. It's nice. It's a nice thing to put the light bulb to turn and to heat your water. You're not going to run an industrial economy on that. It's complete nonsense.
Yeah, and I can't take a little solar power pack that I take out to the Rocky Mountains and sit down and charge my phone in 20 minutes or half an hour, but I can stick my freaking outlet into the mains, and in 20 minutes my phone with a fast charger from Samsung is recharged, and I'm back on the ground, back on the movement. No, it's but the thing is that that's part of the reason, though, Hugo. It's not the only reason why the U.S. reduced emissions. You're on the track, but actually, transportation is either the largest or tied for the largest producer of emissions. The transportation, either it's motor vehicles or trucks and such. So that produces 28% of our carbon emissions here in the U.S. And then the power generation is about 27 to 28, depending on what's going on. So reducing it with natural gas had an impact, but a bigger impact was the replacement of fleets, especially in trucks. The truck industry replaced a lot of its vehicles at that time frame. Newer vehicles, more fuel efficient, less emissions, better energy return on them. All of that, the innovation is why the U.S. That's why I threw innovation out there. But we reduced our carbon emissions.
I want to add on transport quickly. While you do that, there's a very dangerous idea running around the world that we can run the industrial economies on train transport. We can transport people by train. It is one of the most dangerous ideas.
Well, hang on a second. You transport people or goods? I thought you
people. Okay, now you've answered the question for me already.
Okay, good.
Because you know the answer, it's coming. The United States in the 1950s, under the brilliant president, General Dwight Eisenhower, built the interstate highways. And you would expect that if you built highways over the country, that you would have more goods on the roads. It's complete nonsense. The United States put their people on the roads through cars and trucks, okay? And they transport their goods through freight railway. The United States has got one of the best freight railway systems in the whole industrialized world. Something that's untold. People say that the United States train sucks. Yes, their passenger trains suck because they figured out that if you put your goods on the railway, you actually bring down the cost of your consumer costs. And this is why the United States have got people running on the highways. It's the same argument to be made for South Africa. If we are serious about Transnet, I don't know how it works at the moment. I suspect it's not working at all. Yeah. If we want to lower our emissions, we need to put our goods and services on the trains, and we need to put the people on the highway. So we need more highways and more trains at the same time. But the trains is not to carry people, it's to carry freight.
Well, and there's a couple of reasons for that, of course, that make a lot of sense. Number one is it's far more efficient to put goods on a train where you can go on a straight path, by and large, reduced energy costs, much more efficient to deliver it to railheads and that sort of thing. And then the last miles, of course, are covered by trucks and transport lorries, but that's much more efficient. And when you put people on the highways, you create a demand for motor vehicles. People buy vehicles, they get financed, they're built by manufacturers, all the accessories, they replace, they do maintenance. You create an entire economic ecosystem from doing it. Whereas the Europeans, oh, I don't need a car. I can get on the train and go from Zurich to Berlin. Well, fine, go ahead. And also you pay $400.
Well, the Europeans can get away with that because they've got drivers that can transport their freight.
Also, let's be honest.
US has got as well, but also they're actually increasing their carbon emissions because of the fact that people are riding trains. Right. You feel morally virtuous by thinking but you're not. You're actually increasing your carbon emissions by taking the train and not your car.
Well, the other piece of this too is that Western Europe is the size of a postage stamp too. So I mean, it's dense. 800 million people in the size of Texas, roughly. I'm embellishing, but you get my point. There's a little bit of embellishment there. There's a very good question in the chat that I want to get to here, Hugo, that came from Emil Thert. Thert. He said, what's your guess now? Before I answer this, Ethiopia just built one of these, and they have been effective in places, particularly with high amounts of waste. But this is not a green solution. People think it's a green solution. So what's your guess? What's your guess on waste to power systems? South Africa has huge landfill issues.
Landfill issues. Oh,
no, he said, what's waste to power? In other words, you take waste, you burn it, incinerator. People act as if it's green. It's not green. It produces all kinds of problems.
Okay, so here's the basic argument for waste. Okay, every single economic study that's been done on recycling proves that recycling actually is worse for the environment than not doing it. The best way that people don't want to hear this,
with exception of aluminum.
Of aluminum, that's the thing. Okay,
95.
We say aluminium, not aluminum.
I know, but 95% of aluminum's cost is electricity. You reduce the electricity demand by 95% by recycling. Yeah. That's the exception.
That's the exception. So if you stop plastic straws, again, Gavin Newsom, I cannot take that guy. You are actually making paper straw. Where do they make them from? Trees.
They bleach the wood, producing poison water to make that. God.
Okay, so let me give you the best and simplest solution for waste. Nobody likes to hear it. You dig a big hole in the ground and you put it's sort of like a rubber material. I forgot the name now, polypropy something. Okay. Anyways, you put that into it and you just stack the waste. And when the hole is full, you build this nice theme park on top of it. So you just put the stuff in the ground. So you're saying, well, what about the massive amounts of waste? So for the next 100 years, the United States alone needs a facility that is, I think, 15 square miles for all of its waste. It's nothing. We do not produce as much waste as people think. Most of the waste in the world is not coming from the industrialized world because we have a service sector economy. Most of it comes from East Asian countries, from India and China, because they're under process of developing. And actually, they are using less waste in the industrial growth than we did when we developed. And the reason is because they've got better technology.
Yes, that's true.
So waste is not an issue. If you care about the environment, you need people to have energy and economic growth. If you make people richer, I think there's a threshold of $40,000 a year. As soon as you go above that, you start being green and all virtuous. Then you stop caring about the environment.
Not me.
Okay, but not Chris. But this is the point about it. I just wish that when people look at green solutions, okay, I am for saving the environment. I like conservation. When I'm in South Africa, I'm all out. I like the animals and I like the wildlife. I just want people to think a bit. Is what somebody is telling me true? Or is it a BS story? Or is he thinking it's true, but it's actually doing more damage in the process? And with a lot of recycling solutions, it's doing more damage in the process. Here's a simple fact about recycling. It's you get these grannies that put their bottles one side and their paper and then the plastic and whatever. It
all gets dumped in together now.
And they feel very good and they preach to everyone to recycle. They sort and recycle. They are doing more damage to the environment. Why? If you've got 4 refuge bags or 4 refuge dustbins, you need 4 cars.
Right.
You're quadrupling your carbon emissions. Okay, just one base fact. You need 4 processing facilities. That's 4 times the amount of energy, assuming they use the same amount of energy. You are doing more damage to the environment by actually thinking you're doing good. The best way of recycling is just put everything into a hole. It doesn't sound nice and glamorous, but it's actually the most sustainable.
Now, here actually, my waste management company, it's a private one that we pay for, actually was making money off of waste before we started shipping it all to China. And then they made even more off of shipping it to China. Now, the Chinese, out of a political act, have decided they're not going to accept our waste, or the amount of particles per billion is reduced to such a level that it's not even naturally occurring environment. So you basically can't ship your waste to China. But frankly, I think it was morally bankrupt of us to ship our waste to China to begin with. I mean, it's what the Germans did back in the 1990s. They came up with this thing called the grüne Punkt, the green dot. that was on every manufacturer. You could join, manufacturers joined voluntarily. They paid fees into it. And then that meant that they would recycle all of the waste that comes from their products. Okay, great. Only to find out a few years later that there were barges circling around Thailand waiting for permission to bring their goods on because they were full of plastic that Germans recycled, and it was shipped all the way across the world, burning kerosene in a fuel in a ship to take it to Thailand to put in a landfill. These virtue signaling idiots get on my nerves, and I'm going to rant for a second here. California, I was there when the plastic straw ban went into effect during the 2018 Sevens World Cup in San Francisco. What a bunch of moronic, useless, feckless, virtue signaling turds. 98% of the waste that winds up in that great Pacific swirl out there, that nasty looking thing, comes from 9 rivers in Asia and Africa. 1 river in Africa and the rest are in Asia. All that trash is because people in Asia don't have a way to dispose of their refuse. They just throw it in the rivers and it goes down there. It's not coming from us. All the plastic that's used in California winds up in a landfill. So it's going to be in the ground for 10,000 years. Here's a little news flash for you. Homo sapiens been around a lot longer than 10,000 years. That stuff will be long gone by the time it becomes such an issue because, as Hugo has pointed out, it doesn't take that much space. Boom. Mini rant. There you go.
It doesn't take space, and it also doesn't leak to the ground if you actually just put a nice filter. So you've got a very impervious material. I just forgot the name about it. It's some polymer, I think.
Polypropylene?
Polypropylene. That's the one, yeah. So they put a layer of polypropylene onto it, and you put the trash on top of it, and you close it later on with grass. There's a place in Pretoria, I think it's one of the funeral places. The funeral parlors is built on top of a recycled landfill. So it usually lasts 10 to 15 years. After 15 years, you just throw mud on top of it and you can build something. In America, you've got ski parks, ski resorts on top of landfills. Yeah. So it is a recycle, but you see, Chris, there's no money to be made out of this thing if you do it properly. There's no corruption to be. There's no promising people to feel virtuous. And this is the big problem about that I've got against the whole green economy. So that is my rant about recycling. Recycling is nonsense. Solar and wind, be careful of it. Just go for what works. Yeah. If you care about Africa, you would want them to use coal because coal is better than chopping down forests. It's not idealistic, but it's about all they can afford at the moment. And we in the West, and I include white South Africans in the West in this definition, we developed through coal power stations to get where we are today. It is self-righteous of us, and it is self-virtuous and all the bad negative things to deny people to develop through the same means that we've done. So unless we can provide them an alternative that is just as cheap, and I suggest that is nuclear, but that means we need to get our act together and build nuclear power stations through a private-public relationship and not screw them with the tariffs and loans.
Yeah,
otherwise, it's going to be coal.
No, it is self-righteous. Now, I criticize China a lot when it comes to energy because they built like 350 new coal-fired power plants every year. But that doesn't mean that I don't think they have a right to do that because they're industrializing. But my point to them is that we develop something that's a better alternative, and then we can sell it to the Chinese, and then they'll use that instead of polluting their skies. But
so the Chinese are building 20 new nuclear power stations, I think it was.
Yeah,
they
that's
are
true.
looking into that. They are being clever about it. But maybe to start off, you need coal. I don't deny it. We started off using coal. Yeah. But you can be clever about these things. So that's the first thing. So I want to move on to another topic now, energy related as well. This is all energy tonight. So recycling also, put it in a hole, please. Okay, and please tell your grandmother that she's actually a bad person and she's going to go to hell for separating her trash. Okay.
So I think Randy will go to hell for something else, probably not for not sorting her trash.
Okay, so I want to go to vegans, the people I hate the most in the world. If anyone's a vegan in the chat, I'm going to offend you right now.
Wow.
Your diet is killing the environment.
I would have assumed it might have been the economic freedom fighters, but go ahead.
Okay, but they are related. There was a time in Cape Town where the EFF fought against the vegans with I think it was some beach strike in Cape Town. I love that because the people I hate that, were fighting each other. So here's the thing about vegans. You are self-righteous. You think you're virtuous, but your diet is actually destroying the environment and the planet. Okay, if we stop eating beef, it means we need more land for your vegetables and your lovely thing. I'm eating carnivore now just to prove to you how bad you are. And if we do that, we're going to chop down more forests, we're going to destroy more land, and you're going to cause more deforestation, more damage to the environment. But there's something else that's not being told. So if you look at carbon emissions graphs throughout the world, they tell you that one of the biggest contributors to CO2 is livestock. Okay, that's in all the graphs. And therefore, we need to start eating less meat, and we're going to save the planet by eating plants and chicken wings and chicken eggs or what the hell not. Complete nonsense. Why do we need livestock on land? Well, I want everyone to, after the show, to look at this a YouTube video by Alan Savory. Do you know who Alan Savory is, Chris?
I do not.
Do you know the concept of regenerative agriculture?
Well,
of
I've heard
holistic
this.
farming?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so holistic farming essentially means you take your livestock, you walk around, you walk them all over the land. So in winter, your grass dries out, and the point is that that grass needs to be knocked in by the livestock into the ground before the next rain comes. Okay, and you can actually restore your topsoil, and the only way to do that is through livestock. Okay, so I'm against factory farming. I think factory farmers need to look into regenerative agriculture. It's going to be a bit of an investment for them, so don't do it immediately. And you can actually have grass-fed animals all the way, and you can sequestrate the carbon into the soil. Okay, this is one of the biggest panaceas, if you will, to fighting carbon emissions, is actually use lots of livestock, eat lots of meat, carbon can be sequestrated into the soil, and we can actually save the environment that way. We can reverse the desertification in many areas of the world. Alan Savory, Zimbabwean, who lives in America as well in the Midwest, has been doing this on many farms throughout Africa and throughout the Midwest of the United States, and they've actually managed to recover many of the prairies that came back. Very interesting concept.
Sounds an awful lot like the way that I farmed on my dairy farm, but I didn't need somebody to tell me how to do that. That's just what we did.
But yeah, so anyway, so eating meat is actually better for the environment because the thing is, grasslands developed a symbiosis with livestock and with all the other antelopes we've got. I mean, my grandfather's time used to tell me of these thousands and thousands of migrating springboks running through South Africa. We don't have a lot of them anymore, and because of that,
no, because they've all gone to France and the UK to play because they're not allowed to play out there because they're white.
Yes, so the only the springbok with a black stripe is still in South Africa. Okay.
Just saying. Couldn't resist. That was too easy.
Yeah. Anyway, so
you're speaking about farming and eating meat and protein's a real issue there. So of course, one of the biggest problems we have in Africa and the developing world, especially, but in Africa really, is stunting. And this is children who get insufficient protein intake under the age of 5. And so their growth is stunted and they develop less acumen and lower IQs as a consequence of not getting sufficient protein at the critical stages of their brain development under the age of 5. This is a pervasive problem across Africa, and it explains a lot of Africa's developmental problems, and it's ignored entirely. We're busy trying to put solar panels in because we're trying to save the world by being green, but kids are not getting the protein they need. And now you got idiots trying to tell them they shouldn't be eating protein in animals. Foot sick.
Yeah, so obviously we need protein to survive. Also, humans are carnivores, okay? We are omnivores, but that also means we are carnivores and herbivores. Mm-hmm. And how do you prove it? Well, we have shoulder rudiments. We are not like gorillas. Okay, we don't have a big tummy. We've got a smaller tummy. And to do that, you need energy-dense food, and that comes from fat and protein. Mm-hmm. And if you want to listen to Professor Tim Noakes and to all the wonderful guys in America saying the same thing, Gary Taubes is one of them. Mm-hmm. If you eat meat, it is much better for losing weight. You cannot lose weight with lots of carbohydrates in your body. So meat-based diet is much better for your overall health than a vegetable-based diet, for example, or a fruit-based or whatever the hell vegans eat. And the other thing is that obesity and diabetes is because of sugar, okay? Yeah. Because of lots of carbohydrates in our diets. So vegans eat that. Are you surprised that you find fat vegetarians? I'm not, because you cannot lose weight with lots of carbohydrates in your body. Yeah. You actually need to have a high protein, low carb diet to lose so. So it's bad for your overall health. And I don't know what bad diabetes is costing the Western world, but it is because vegans pushing the ridiculous diet.
Paula Kernan is asking an interesting question. She says, what about all the land that's currently used for growing the food for all the millions of animals you chaps eat? And that's not to mention the violence involved in eating. I can address that very simply. Let me finish. She said, and that's not to mention the violence involved in eating sentient beings. Not to insult my viewer, because I have no intention. That Paul is a wonderful person, but what sentient beings is the claim that cattle and pigs and sheep are sentient beings? And maybe that's where she's going. But anyway, yeah. So go ahead and address the first part there.
Yeah. So sentient beings is essentially that they all have feelings, and because they have feelings, if we kill them, that's bad. So I'm against halal slaughter. I don't want the animal to suffer. Give them a nice shot through the head or through the heart, and clean shot. If you're a good hunter, if the animal bleeds and it starts running, it's got adrenaline in the blood. The meat doesn't taste that nice afterwards. You have to shoot him through the heart or through the head to get nice meat out of it. So that is a moral way of hunting. Yes, don't let the animal suffer, but kill him quickly. It is not true that we're running out of land. In actual fact, we are using less land at the moment than we've ever done per person, because thinking we're going to run out of land is a Malthusian-based argument. So Malthus was an economist that said, population is growing exponentially, land is reducing multiplicably, therefore eventually we're going to go to a point where we have too many babies and not enough food for everyone. At this moment in history, we have more land available, we have more food available than any time, and we have more people. How do you explain that? Well, the invention of nitrogen was one of them. Nitrogen allowed us to increase agriculture. One of the best innovations, or the best achievements of the United States has been in agriculture. In the 1700s, it was something like you work for yourself and a half person extra or 2 people extra. Today, 1 person in agriculture can feed almost 100 people.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable achievement. The reason is we have industrialized, we have used our brains, so we don't need more land. We can actually use land more intensely. That's the point of this. So regenerative agriculture allows you to recover the land, to recover the soil, and look up Alan Savory onto this. Everyone needs to do that. He has a very good YouTube video, How to Green the Earth.
Well, Thomas Malthus, part of the problem with him was it was a Eurocentric view, as if the world started and stopped with Europe. He wasn't thinking of a far greater planet. That's part of the problem, and that's.
But also part of the problem is, in Thomas Malthus's time, this was not a ridiculous view, because he didn't understand nitrogen. He didn't understand the modern economy.
Sure.
We have no excuse today, okay? Because we understand that you can have exponential population growth, and you can reduce the amount of land and still feed more people. And the only way you can do that is through innovation and through technology, and actually through energy. Energy allows us to use more energy-dense technologies. And when we do that, you don't have to use slaves anymore to plow the land. You now can use a tractor to do so.
Right.
Okay, so it's 1 person who's plowing more land than any slave has ever done, and he produces more food for everyone else. The reason we have leisure to sit in front of our computer and not work the land is because of energy. It's because of innovation. It's because Thomas Malthus was proven wrong.
Well, and it wasn't just him. I mean, this stuff comes around repeatedly. In the 1960s, 70s, the Earthwatch Institute, I think it was here in the States. Lester Brown, I think it was. But he might have been involved with it too. But I remember as a young man, they terrified us. I mean, we're going to run out of food in 20 years. We couldn't possibly do this. Well, a little thing called the Green Revolution happened. And the Earth's population doubled in 17 years and doubled again in 13 years to where it's at now. And we're not starving. We have an excess. We have a glutton of food. Now, that doesn't mean there isn't hunger. There's a maldistribution of food on this planet in many cases, but there's more than enough food to feed everybody in the current situation. So they've missed the Green Revolution in the 60s, which new seeds and varieties. Then they missed the genetically modified organism, GMO revolution that took place too. There's just innovation and technology. Humans are curious creatures. We always come up with innovative solutions, whether it's the wheel, it's fire before that, or it's birth control, whatever it takes, we figure something out.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So, by the way, in terms of overpopulation, the world's population, according to the UN, is not predictions, and it's about the only thing they get right, it's not going to reach more than 9 billion people. We have the most amount of children ever is living today.
Yeah.
The next generation will not have as many children, because if you want to see how a country develops, the best metric to look at is the amount of children that a woman has on average. In South Africa, it's already 2.2. It has fallen. It used to be 5, 6 about 10, 20 years ago. It's fallen remarkably well. As soon as you give women rights, you allow them to get educated. You
Who did that? Who did that? Who gave them rights? Knock it off.
Those evil bad men, white men. So
that's right. White men gave women rights because we're evil.
And now they're taking over the world, so we are submissive. But here's the thing: the best contraceptive is to send a woman to college.
Oh, no, it's to educate, not just college. No. The best contraceptive is to send girls through primary at a minimum, complete primary school. That reduces birth rates astronomically. But if they get through secondary school, it goes down lower, but it's not as great a gain. College is a small number of people, but sending girls through school, that's the real difference. You see places that have the highest birth rates in the planet, like Uganda and Nigeria, which has the highest, both places I've lived, by the way. And girls don't even get through primary school. And that's a big reason why. We've seen this the world over. It's not Africa. It's not Asia. It's not America. It's everywhere in the world. Every place in the world where girls get primary school education, birth rates drop precipitously. If they get through secondary school, it continues a downward decline. And it stabilizes. That's the key. Educate girls.
So I want to tell anyone who looks at the white privilege argument, this argument, okay? And just based on what we said now. If you want to measure the wealth of the country, you can look at GDP, you can look at energy, but you can look at the amount of children per woman, okay, on average. In most of the Western world, it's about 2.2. In some countries in Europe, like Germany, they stopped having kids because they, They care about the environment. It's less than two
No,
children.
they care about themselves exclusively. That's why they're selfish.
Okay, but whatever. That's their reason. That's their argument to do so. My mother, okay, Afrikaner woman, supposedly privileged, was one of 6. My grandmother was one of 10. What does that tell me? Tells me that they lived in much deeper poverty than I've ever lived, because we were only 4 children,
Right.
and 4 children was a lot because my father was. I was semi-wealthy growing up. Okay, I won't deny that, and we had the opportunity to have 4 in my class. We were the only family of 4. Everyone else was 1 or 2 kids. Okay, this is a generational transition. It shows you that the Afrikaners reached wealth and prosperities in the 90s, and if you look at the GDP per capita, it happened that way. It's the same for any other group. Black South Africans, we're all talking, all the far right guys are talking about black people overpopulating us. The average children per woman in South Africa per black woman is about 2 nowadays, 2 to 3 for the new generation. And that means that they've actually increased their well-being. And this is despite the ANC, they could have been, much better. So it's one metric to use. Is to look at the amount of children.
A significant contribution to that reality is that the black middle class is now larger than the white middle class in South Africa. And of course, that's never talked about. The black middle class was virtually non-existent. It existed, but it was very small in 94. But today it's larger. And it's in spite of black economic empowerment. It's not because of that. That's the irony there. But,
so Erika here says, I guess boredom creates a perfect situation to make babies. She's not entirely wrong. TV was only discovered in 1975 in South Africa. And
discovered like it was diamonds. Come on, I realize that English is your first language, Hugo, because it wasn't discovered. Maybe Afrikaners discovered it for the first time, and it was in black and white on a tiny little screen, and you had 2 channels, and all you got to watch was the racist Leon Schuster, right?
Yes, so because television was delayed, it was illegal in South Africa. It was declared immoral by, Dutch Reformed Church or one of the apartheid ministers. Some of these guys.
Part of the oppressive apartheid state, that collusion between the Dutch Reformed Church and the government.
So as a result, parents at night had nothing else to do, and I'm not surprised that we had large families back then. But as soon as television came out, YouTube nowadays, you'll find that people actually plan it. But generally, the reason is that if you give women access to contraceptive, if you get them educated, they tend to delay having children. And that is that's how you measure economic prosperity. It's one metric, it's not the only one, there's others as well. I want to get to just quickly back to agriculture. So eating meat is good for the environment. It's not bad for the environment if it's properly farmed. So eat grass-fed meat. It's also good for your overall health. I think the vegans have totally lost the plot, like most things. That's one thing to mention here. And then getting to the green religion. I don't know if you've read Michael Schellenberger's new book, Apocalypse Never. Okay?
I have not, but trust me, I know it's a religion for those people.
Yeah, so
I'm a conservationist, and they really piss me off because I restore the land, I treat the land property, I renew it by replanting things and taking care of it. But these environmental nut jobs drive me nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting that the people who try and save the world end up doing more harm to it. So there was an argument called the population bomb by Paul Ehrlich, was an American, American, but a microbiologist, I think he was, or something of the sort.
No, I'm familiar with Ehrlich. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, so in the 1970s, he predicted by the year 2000, we're going to have too many people in the world. It's essentially a Malthusian argument, and we're going to run out of food. And then there was a bet made to him by Julian Simon, who was an economist, who said to him, give me any 10 materials in the world, and I guarantee you by the year 2000, we're going to have more of them and the price is going to be lower. More reserves and the price is lower. And they made a bet, and Julian Simon won it. So make this point. At this point in time in history, we have more energy available than ever before. We have more resources available than ever before. We have more people than ever before. And we have more abundance. And how do you explain that? You can only do so by looking at human ingenuity.
Exactly.
The countries in the world that are poor is not because they're being exploited. It's complete nonsense. They are poor because of their own internal policies, because they have not adopted a free market economy and they don't have functioning institutions.
Spot on.
So
no, but we do dumb things. Do that sounds bad, like poo poo.
we do, and that's why you need a federal system. So if California is stupid, you get smart people in Texas,
But even in a federal system, we have stupidity. Let me give an example, something that I'm very much against, and that's the use of vast swaths of the Midwest to grow maize, not for cattle and for livestock, but to make ethanol. Ethanol, you barely get a 5% return beyond what you put the inputs in it. So you waste all of this nitrogen to fertilize, which runs off into the Mississippi, which causes algae blooms in the Gulf of Mexico. By the time it gets down there, causes environmental damage, which is unnecessary. If we're going to grow that maize to feed people, I'm okay with that. But we grow entire swaths of our Midwest to grow corn to produce ethanol when we are the world's largest energy producer, and we subsidize it, and we're still subsidizing, and it needs to stop. That's a dumb thing with agriculture. Let me jump in. I got just real quick. You can get to that in a second, but I got to do some homework because there's a comment here from Angela Watson. Angela said she subbed today, or she became a subscriber today. She was looking for the full video that Trump tweeted this morning about Waters' words, and I landed up on this gentleman's site. By the way, folks, just to let you know, what she's mentioning is that last night I hadn't watched Jesse Waters in ages, and I happened to catch it. And he did an opening Waters' words monologue for about 6 minutes, which just blew the Biden campaign completely out of the water. Every argument that they try to make, he just calmly, gently put obvious, clear context for everybody. So I recorded that, and then I gave some commentary on the front end of it, commentary on the back end of it, and I posted it. And people have been finding my website because I did a video about Jesse Waters. So thank you, Angela, for coming. I think you'll like the content. Just really quickly for Angela and anyone who might be new here before we get back to Hugo. On this channel, it's a big focus on Africa, but it's all of Africa, although my live streams tend to be focused a lot in South Africa, but not today. This is different. And then I do videos on U.S. political scene. That's politics, liberty under assault, politics USA, also rugby, a bunch of other stuff. So you can catch pretty much everything on this channel. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, Hugo, you were going to respond to that point I made about maize.
Yeah, so maize and ethanol, that's a stupid policy. But the dumbest U.S. subsidy policy, in my view, is sugar.
I beat you to it.
Beat me to it. But the reason you're never going to get rid of it is very obvious. And that's because the primaries are held in Iowa, and Iowa's got big sugar farms.
Because of what?
Iowa, because of the first primaries, I think, is held in Iowa, or the first election.
No, but that's no. I disagree with you on this one. But the reason we're not going to get rid of it is because we subsidize sugar. By the way, we pay like 3 times the world price for sugar here. When I was in Africa, people like just dump sugar on the table. Nobody freaks out. But in America, you're like, whoa, don't spill that. It's expensive. And that's because it's subsidized, and it subsidizes Cubans in Florida and beet farmers, sugarcane farmers in Louisiana. That's where that's at. $5 billion worth of annual subsidies for sugar. The sugar that you're talking about is high dextrose corn syrup, which comes from the maize. That is subsidized
which
as well.
Which is Japan's revenge for World War II.
So this nonsense here, I love Coca-Cola, but I love Coca-Cola in bottles with pure cane sugar. That's the good stuff. I can get that from Mexico. So I go to Costco and I pay $21 a case for the bottle so I can drink real Coca-Cola. But this is corn syrup. It's not. It's terrible. But that's what fuels our economy.
That's horrible for your health, and it probably is leading you on the way to diabetes and heart attack. The U.S. population is of the world population by now. Oh my gosh, that is not very good.
Blood sugar's 85. My resting heart rate's 118 or 58. My cholesterol is 178. Boom, 55 years old, better than most 20-year-olds.
Cholesterol is not bad for you. Just have to put it out there. It's completely debunked. The cholesterol does not cause heart problems. What causes heart problems is insulin resistance, and that is generally because people eat too much sugar. One thing I would like to change in the United States.
85, my sugar.
85.
Now, you Europeans measure liters or something different, so that probably sounds high.
Liters.
Probably sounds high to you, but that's awesome. Pre-diabetics start at 120, and diabetes is beyond that. 85 is normal. You get below that, it's low blood sugar, so that's good.
Okay, so you I think it's because you were fit your entire life, and you were in the army and all these things. So that
take care of yourself. You take care of yourself. You can avoid the sin. You can afford the sin, I should say. You can afford the sin.
Okay. No, but anyway, so the point is the United States has conquered the world in many ways, but one way which is bad is, man is born free, but everywhere in the world he finds himself in Big Mac chains. And for some reason, you have exported your fast food to the entire world. Big Macs.
It's a plot. It was our intention. See, the U.S. has the world's most advanced medical techniques, and eventually you're all going to need us to save you with our insulin, our treatments. It's a perfect business model,
because if you stop eating sugar, you don't need the pills for your heart attacks. You don't need all the other chronic diseases that come with industrialization. It's actually not industrial disease, it's sugar diseases. Yeah. Diabetes used to be called the sugar because we could intuitively figure out that sugar causes diabetes. The medical practice has changed it, so we would have to go to a doctor to ask him, and he tells you, no, it's all these other things. Rubbish, it's sugar that causes it. High fructose corn syrup is Japan's revenge for World War II.
Well, thank you, Japan. But no, I'm not a huge fan of high, but it's in everything. It's in they put it in food all over the place. People don't even realize it's there. It's very pervasive, and that's what a lot of maize is used for. So yeah, I think we agree on that one. Well, we've got kind of far away from energy. We're coming up on about 90 minutes. Gonna have to knock off here shortly. So Hugo, you want to bring it back to energy and leave folks with any thoughts about energy? We haven't really talked about the respiratory diseases caused by the charcoal that people in Africa rely on, but you did allude to 45% to get their power from wood. Yeah.
Yeah, so there is respiratory diseases being caused by coal. It is bad for people in Witbank. I don't deny that. But again, you have to compare it to the alternative. Everything in life is a trade-off. Is it better to power Africa, admit that we're going to cause few guys' lungs and maybe reduce their life expectancy by 5 years, but you actually extend their life expectancy by 40 years by taking them off the wood to the coal, and then you reduce it by a bit of 5? If that's about some calculation, it is better than the alternative.
There's a net gain.
It's a net gain, okay? We need to start thinking about how we're going to power the African economy, because we don't have energy in many countries. There's some countries in Africa that's got 1 or 2 hospitals, and they don't have power in that country to build another one.
Yeah.
They need energy. My suggestion, it's going to be coal, it's going to be natural gas. And if we can get nuclear off the ground, yes, we should. We should not go in with the Guptas and the Russians. And, if that is part of the story, I'm against it,
Oh, no, the whole thing with Zuma, the $7 billion nuclear thing, why are we buying nuclear power from Russia when South Africa has pebble bed reactor technology?
Pebble bed was too expensive. Pebble bed was, I don't know, the government canceled it. It was the first small modular reactor. But a lot of it was actually done in the United States, not in South Africa. Yeah. We worked with a lot of your scientists at that time. Interesting enough, a lot of the new small modular reactors have looked into pebble beds and they still find it to be too expensive. So maybe the design was not worth it. But that being said, the pressure water reactor at Kruger, built by the French, known technology, known to work, is quite good. You can get the French to build another one for you. I mean, I might work on the project if South Africa does that. Not saying that's why I'm biased towards the French.
Well, I have. This is one area I definitely have no investments, no interest in. That's nuclear energy industry, but I'm a huge proponent for it, and I have been for many years. And that, despite having been a radiated target in the Alps when Chernobyl went up, which was the 3rd highest spot hit. The immediate area around Chernobyl was the worst, then Scandinavia second, and then the Alps in Central Europe was the 3rd worst hit with nuclear radiation. That weekend, I was up in the Alps skiing. Was I skiing? It was April. I'm trying to remember. But I was up in the Alps that week. I think I was skiing. Anyway, and I got irradiated. So it might explain my my ability to grow this beer. The radiation I got back on the 26th of April, 1986.
So you're actually green, yeah?
Yeah. 26. April 1986 in Chernobyl. Yeah, that was a song by Udo Lindenberg. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. So, Hugo, thanks a lot, man. We talked about...
I just wanted one more comment.
Yeah,
there was somebody in the comments that asked about fusion. I worked in the fusion project on the south of France, ITER, International Thermonuclear Reactor. Fusion is brilliant as a concept at the moment. It is the solution to a lot of problems of the world. You can power a city like Johannesburg from a cup of seawater. That's the claim. I think it's a bit exaggerated. Problem is, it's always 20 years away.
Yeah.
Fusion reactors, the one I worked at ITER, it's only going to be finished in 2035, and that's if they don't go over budget, and there's lots of issues with those things. So it is, if we can get it working, I'm all for it, but at the moment, it's not a solution for us. Okay, we need to look at what works before we go to what should work.
Well, speaking of it always being 20 years in the future, one of my favorite scenes from a movie ever was the movie The Saint with Val Kilmer. At the end of the movie, he goes to Oxford, and the scientist who supposedly develops cold fusion is giving her a lecture, and he sits down next to the cops in the Saint disguise. He's always in disguise. And he says to the cop, he says, you don't believe in this cold fusion mumbo jumbo, do you? One of my favorite lines in a movie ever. I was thinking, no, I don't, but I'd love to. I'd really like to buy into it. All right, cool beans. All right, well, so Hugo, thanks a lot. We've been talking about the channel. We got John talking about energy, something I have a great interest in. So I really enjoyed it. Had a really good audience today. Thanks everybody for your questions, whether it was about eating meat or killing animals or using land or landfills or energy. It was a fascinating discussion. Please, I'll invite Hugo to come back on the channel. He's not got his own channel up yet, but I think
I've got one now at the moment.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you were contemplating.
I was contemplating it. I had one small stream last week, and this coming week I've got 2 to 3 people. And I'm going to cover energy stuff. I've got energy investors and people coming on the channel to talk about African energy. To get the conversation going, I think it's an important conversation to be had. But again, I'm semi-pessimistic given the corruption in the country that any of these bright ideas might go to fruition. And I hope somebody proves me wrong, on that.
All right. Well, now that I know your channel's up, I'll get the link to it and we'll post it in the video after the fact, so you guys can go find his channel if you want to check it out and subscribe to Hugo Kruger's channel. Hugo, many of you may know him. He has this habit of calling into everybody's channel. So now we finally told him, get your own damn channel. Quit bothering us. No, just kidding. Yes. But he's going to have his own channel. So Hugo, thanks a lot for coming in today. Buy a donkey. I really appreciate it. I'm going to ask you to step out, and then I'm going to close out with some remarks. Folks, we're going to talk about tonight's stream And okay, we get folks to give a clap or a thanks or a thumbs up or something in the chat.
Goodbye. Yep.
For Hugo. All right, please. All right, take care, Hugo. We'll catch you later.
Cheers.
All right, there we go. All right, folks. Well, welcome. Well, not welcome. Almost farewell time. Thank you all for tuning into this stream today. It was fascinating for me. I really enjoyed that conversation with Hugo. But it seems like we were on the same path most of the time. And when he was thinking what I was thinking what he was thinking, almost as if we rehearsed it, but we didn't. But thanks for tuning in. It was a fascinating discussion about energy in general, and also we got into agriculture, which was quite interesting, I think, as well. But folks, please come back for this evening's stream, late afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. That will be at 3:35 Eastern Standard Time. It will be at 9:35 in South Africa and Botswana, 8:35 in Windhoek, Abuja, and London. So please tune in for that. Winston Smiles. I know on the banner it says members perks. Well, the members perks simply means that those who are paying members of the channel will be able to comment in the chat. But everyone's welcome to come into the stream this evening. Winston, I'm going to try to twist his arm a little bit, get him to sing some music. He's an amazing singer. He sings opera. He sings pop music. Had a very good song about Boers recently. And he's also someone who's very angry about the farm attacks. So Winston Smiles will be on the channel later today. So please tune in for that. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. And for the new folks who showed up, thanks for coming in. I hope that you enjoyed this. Go back and look at my playlist to find previous streams. You'll find a wide variety of guests on my channel. Speaking of wide variety, I had last month, well, in August actually, Dasha Pruitt, who is a political refugee from Russia, but grew up in the United States. She arrived here at the age of 10. Her parents her father was sent to the Gulag for drawing a painting, or doing a drawing of Lenin wearing a dress. And the Soviets didn't take kind to that, so they shipped him off to the Gulag for a few years. And anyway, so her parents fled to Soviet Russia in 1980. She came here as a 10-year-old, and she grew up in the States, but she still got that East European accent to her voice. She's running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. She was my guest to talk about her campaign. I heard from her yesterday. Her campaign is going very well, she says. I hope it's going well. We could use another conservative Republican in the House of Representatives because she would replace a leftist liberal. But we'll have her back on the channel sometime soon. She's agreed to come back on, hopefully this weekend. Anyway, so there you go. And bear in mind, folks, that my streams this week after Monday, so Tuesday through Friday, will be early streams because I have to work at the War College to help out a program over there. So I'll be broadcasting about 7 in the morning this time, which would make it 6 hours later, 1 p.m., 1300 in South Africa, Botswana. That will be during the week, and then I'll be back for a late Night Owls edition for a stream. So it'll be early and later than normal, but that's just this week and the next week after that. So folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. Hendo has put up a link to Farmers Aid in South Africa. If you'd like to help people out who are in need in South Africa and you have the means to do it, Farmers Aid is a good, worthwhile cause. Let me slide over here so you can see it. There you go. Farmers Aid, South Africa. And I'll leave that up for a moment. There's the numbers. Also, folks, if you're a person of faith or just a person that cares, I ask that you send your thoughts and prayers out to Giselle's father, who has suffered a couple of heart attacks or strokes in Namibia and can't get care there because the medical system is broken. So he's resting at home, recuperating. And at the same time, her husband, Johan Eisel, his father has unfortunately contracted the COVID virus, Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19. And 76 years old, he's in hospital now and in very poor condition, had a very difficult night last night. So if you could send your thoughts and prayers out to them and try to maybe get some positive energy if such a thing is possible to help them recover, I would be very grateful for that. Of course, Giselle is a good friend of the channel, so we'd like to help out possible. Also, I've left it up for a few minutes there. If you want to help people out, if you're in KZN in the Midlands, you can reach Patrick at that number. And if you want to, if you're down near Durban, you can reach Eric at her number there. And also you can reach Cole in Johannesburg North of Bryanston if you want to help people who are in need in South Africa. This charity focuses exclusively at the moment on white South Africans, but that's just because that was where the need was the greatest and there was the most neglect. They weren't getting assistance from anyone. So Farmers Aid South Africa was created for that purpose, just so that you know that. But there are other worthwhile charities as well if you have the means to help. Anyway, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. What's such a horrible weekend? Yeah, some bad things happening all over. And let me see what else. There's some chats coming in. People thanking. Olaf might not be on for the next 3 weeks. Very busy with audits. Okay, well, it's good that you're busy with audits unless they're auditing you, Olaf. If you're auditing somebody else, that's not so bad. Xylitol. Okay, folks. Yeah, and I just need to get some positiveness in my life. Well, tune in tonight for Winston Smiles. There'll be some negative stuff we'll talk about, but we're going to do positive, and you'll hear his music. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate your support of the channel. God bless. If you're interested in catching who's going to be on? It's on Ronaldo's channel. He's got, what's his name? Franz Krüger. So if you'd like to hear Franz Krüger from Institute for, I think he's from Institute for Race Relations, that'll be on Ronaldo host. And Ronaldo will be on at 1400 Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. in South Africa. So we're talking about 24 minutes, 26 minutes from now. So go check out Ronaldo's channel and listen to Franz Krüger if you'd like. Folks, we'll catch you later here at 9:35. Looking forward to it. Erica, thank you for coordinating to get Winston Kutsia on here. Winston Smiles. We'll see you all later tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless. Didn't play any music. We're not going to do it because it's an interview, but we'll get some music tonight from Winston, or we'll play some other music. Or maybe I should play the Donald Trump song. Maybe, I don't know. Should I leave with the Donald Trump song? I wasn't planning on doing it, but it is queued up here if anybody wants me to play it. If you want me to play the Donald Trump song, just say so. I don't have to play it. It's just I'm kind of hooked on it. You guys want to hear it? Okay, the chat's a little bit behind. I'll give you a second here to respond to it. But do you want to hear the Donald Trump song before I close out? Anybody? Everybody's saying goodbye. Naked Cowboy, no. Everybody's saying goodbye. So why are there ads on the streams? Because YouTube puts them on there, Stevie? What do you mean? In the middle of the stream? There shouldn't be any ads in the middle of the stream. I don't understand the question. I don't understand the question, Stevie. Yes. Robert says yes. Charmaine says show off. Yes. Okay. All right. Here we go. Yes, the show off. Here we go, folks. This is the Donald Trump song, Los de la Habana. This is awesome. This is the English version, folks. Please enjoy this. Here we go. You ready for this? All right. There you go. Here we go. Well, folks, hang on. There'll be an encore here. You ready for the encore? That's right. Here's the encore. I can't help myself today. I'm in a good mood now. Here you go. You ready for this one? This is the Spanish version. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go with the Spanish version of the same song. This is the original version, and this is the one which people are doing the Trump challenge, in which people listen to the video and they dance and sing over it and record it and send it into the group. Fantastic. Their audience base is growing. They were at 2,800. I think they're growing rapidly now. Here's the Spanish version, folks, of I Will Vote for Donald Trump. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Just love that song in Spanish and in English. It's awesome. Folks, we are now just a little over 3 weeks away from Decision 2020 here in the United States. Will people vote for Sleepy Joe Biden, or will they vote for the president for election? We shall see. Will voter fraud and mail-in ballot fraud have an impact on the election? Will the riots and insurrection in this country have an impact on the election? I'm sure all these things will play a role, but the enthusiasm, the excitement for the president is off the charts, folks, across the country, whether it's Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, as you can see right there, or it's other groups of Americans. People are excited about the president, despite the lying, corrupt media. Anyway, folks, please tune in at 9:35 South Africa time, 8:35 in Namibia, in Nigeria, and in London, UK, as well as 3:35 Eastern Standard here for Winston Smiles here for the next stream on Chris White Africa. Thank you so much for your time, for your patronage, and for joining us here today. We'll catch you in about an hour and 45 minutes. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, Winston Smiles coming up next on the channel. And in the meantime, go check out Ronaldo Ho's program, and you'll see Franz Krüger on there from the Institute for Race Relations. Enjoy, folks. Bye-bye.